Been a bit of a cracking first week of the Tour de France. It always is. But this week, I reckon we've got more to talk about than normal. Kate Bates here for the Wheelhouse Cycling Podcast. Merksy, you're in the studio with me today.
This is happening far too regularly, Catherine Lindsay Bates.
Oh, I'm a fan. I think our community is a fan too.
Oh, you're too kind. Hurry back, Joel.
He'll be back next week. You're just keeping the seat nice and warm for him. Merksy, it's been a massive week. Started with tax in the Basque Country.
Madness. And just when we thought, a day ago, it was meant to be, Pog's gone for all money. Jonas is kicking his ass. And a stage later, hello.
He's back.
He's back. What a great race this is.
Well, I mean, we saw Cofidis take the first stage in the first yellow jersey, and I saw a cool line saying that the last time Cofidis won a stage of the Tour de France was before Obama's 2 presidencies and Trump's presidency. Just to give a little bit of context, 15 years it's been.
Wow, cool to see such a an historic team, I suppose you could call them, winning a stage at the Tour.
It is, yeah. I mean, they kind of were talked about. I mean, people have some nasty jokes about Cofidis, I have to say. They've kind of been seen as the whipping boys or kind of making up numbers out there. So that was a pretty big way to change the scene, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, good to see that jersey on top of the podium.
Well, the sprinters have been having fun. I've still been working my way through Unchained. Merksy, have you finished all of them yet?
No, not yet.
See, a lot of people binge them.
I'm on the real thing.
I know. It's hard to watch, isn't it? But I did look at the episode Plan B about Jasper Philipsen, where they call him Jasper Disaster. Actually, he introduces himself like that, and he says it with a little bit of sadness in his eyes. It's an unpleasant episode to watch, let me tell you, Jasper Philipsen. You feel sorry for him. Not anymore.
No. How good is he going?
How good is his
2
sprinting?
stages in a row. And we must mention Matthew van der Poel leading him out beautifully.
Well, do we say beautifully when he got relegated for throwing some elbows?
Well, he still won the race, though.
He did. It's been interesting. Jasper Philipsen, by far the standout sprinter at this stage. And if you're watching on, you'll notice that I'm wearing quite an interesting green-coloured garment. To describe what it is, I would say it's a mix between kind of sage and deep green, perhaps. It's not a particularly nice colour.
It's similar to the green jersey this year, though.
Exactly,
what is going on there?
That's why I've got it on.
It's just not cricket.
I don't know why. I think it might be that Skoda has changed their official colour, and so they've changed the green jersey that Skoda sponsors to be this mooted green. But we do see Jasper Philipsen in the mooted green sprinters jersey.
And interesting, he says he's not interested in the points or the green jersey. Well, Van Aert is second at the moment.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? I think that we always hear the sprinters talking down, Cav, he's not too stressed about the record. Jasper Philipsen, not too stressed about the green jersey. I don't know that I buy it. I think there's a lot of pressure on him, but he's really standing up to the plate. Do you know who we haven't really seen crack that top 5 yet?
Tell me.
Mark Cavendish.
He said he's just warming up.
Okay, all right.
I have full faith in him.
You have full faith. Well,
especially with Renshaw there.
He's got his secret weapon there. Caleb Ewan. He's been best at third and then a second, so he's getting closer.
He got close to a photo finish.
Oh, don't do it. That's like a trauma response. Brian Cockard is sprinting quite a lot out for intermediate points, so he might be one to watch for the green as well. And what I find interesting about him, he won a tour of the stage of the Tour Down Under this year into the bottom of Wollonga when they didn't go up Wollonga Hill. And he was a world champion, Olympic champion on the track in the Omnium. So he's very, very quick, but it's taken him quite a few years to really find his road sprinting legs. I reckon by the third week of the tour. That might be 2 Cofidis stage wins by the end.
I find his
Heavens.
style when he's sprinting for the line, he throws his head and his body around it. It's quite interesting to watch.
He does. Well, okay, so we kind of skipped past it, Matthew van der Poel, you mentioned, but he did get relegated on stage 4 for sticking his elbows out in the sprint and causing a little bit of an issue. Mm-hmm. Now, we certainly don't support any kind of dangerous riding, but it's probably a good reminder that in sprint designs, even if they have the slightest turn in them, it can really end up being quite messy. A lot of the riders just focusing on that straight line to the sprint, but if the finish line isn't a straight line and your elbows are out, I'm glad that there wasn't too much carnage there, but interesting that Van der Poel, in previous years, it's been all about him getting stage wins, and now we're seeing him in a lead-out role.
Yeah, he's very impressive.
He is. Well, he also has been pretty active in breaks as well.
Can we get on to, the battle? The battle, Jonas and Tade.
My cousin, my Danish cousin.
The fishmonger.
The fishmonger. Well, here at the Wheelhouse, we do love talking about Jonas and his incredible exploits. You might remember, Merksy, you put together that beautiful clip last year of all of the commentators really struggling to pronounce his surname. We kind of landed on Vingegaard, but that sounds almost a little bit Muppetsy the way I say it.
Just roll with Jonas.
Yeah, that's why we're just going to roll with Jonas, because I can't help but notice, and I've watched a few different networks and a few different clips where once again in getting a bit of a divergent view on how to actually say his name. But regardless of what you call him, we have a ding-dong battle on our hands. At the end of stage 6, he's in the yellow jersey, ahead of Pogacar. Next is the Aussie.
The Aussie. We'll talk about the
Aussie
Aussie soon. But how about Jonas putting a minute on Pogacar, and everyone was quickly writing him off, saying he's not fit. He hadn't ridden a mountain stage, Tade, since Paris-Nice.
No, so I think that interestingly, you can probably break down all of the GC contenders really separately, look at their strengths and weaknesses, and on different stages, seeing different things emerge. What I really liked about Jonas's ride on stage 5 in particular, and then again on stage 6, was that his team is starting to really rally and come together for a team result. I point that out because Wout van Aert, Jumbo, teammate of Jonas, well, he had his cranky pants on earlier in the tour, chucked a water bottle, kind of blew a foo-foo valve after the finish, after losing the sprint and not getting the result he wanted. But it appears to me like, and we'll have to wait for next year's version of Unchained, but it appears to me like Wout and Jonas have sat down, they've smoked the peace pipe, and they've said, let's get this done. One team, one mission. And I think Wout's becoming kind of his secret weapon.
Yeah, and what a secret weapon to have.
Well,
one of the best bicycle riders on the planet.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing to see Wout van Aert go in a break up the Tourmalet with the sole purpose of being there for when Jonas bridged across. He wasn't going for the stage win. He was just making sure that he would be there to provide the help until the very end. And to me, not only is Jonas the best climber so far in the race, but I think that Jumbo are far exceeding UAE. And that's probably, to me, the more noticeable thing. Because we can talk about Jonas versus Pog all day, but that is quite a difference to me because, yeah, Team Jumbo, they have a lot of horses left in the race when it comes down to the mountains, but UAE are struggling.
But to get that next day, Tade, to get that time back, he just looked like a beast.
It's interesting. We were watching Merksy, and I kept saying to you, he doesn't look himself. He doesn't look comfortable. And we also said a couple of weeks ago that we expected Pog would have to ride into it, that it wasn't going to be easy for him with not a lot of racing under his belt to just pop out and be on form in the first week. And that may be what we're seeing, but he certainly doesn't quite look himself. 3 weeks, especially in a Tour de France, is a long one. But he was quite funny at the end of the stage because he said that on the Tourmalet when Jumbo really started turning the screws, and I'm using his exact words here, so don't shoot the messenger. He said, I thought, oh shit, I may as well just pack my bags and go home.
Yeah.
But then he found his legs. And then on the final climb, not only was he able to hang on, but he was able to attack Vingegaard. But an observation from both of them, remembering we're in week 1. We're not even at the weekend of week 1. Both Vingegaard and Pogacar are absolutely at their limits. In both stage 5 and 6, we have seen these close-ups of them literally drooling with exertion. It's quite cool to watch, actually.
Yeah, well, I saw a great shot of when our Aussie Jai Hindley won his stage, and Jonas was trying to get him back, and he was in a group, and he got really cranky at the guys around him because they wouldn't pull a turn, and he was really frustrated, which was telling, I thought.
The politics of it all. And that's what is something to remember as well. We'll talk about Jaune in a minute, but the strategy that went into him taking the stage victory and taking over the Maillot Jaune was really savvy. The strategy of nobody riding with Jonas, really savvy. When Poggi won his stage 6, I say his stage. Next week we may have 4 examples of stages he's won. He also sat on Jumbo pretty much the entire time until he attacked Jonas. So I think that a lot of that is going to come into play. And if it continues that Jumbo look just so much stronger than any other team, they will use that to their advantage, riders like Poggi. But I do want to talk about Jai, because if we look at the GC as it currently stands toward the end of week 1, with some sprinters stages ahead of us, we're seeing quite a clear emergence of who's on form and not. And I mean, I think we can look at the last couple of days and acknowledge that you can lose some big time on one day. Like you don't need a whole week to lose a lot of time at the Tour de France. But there really are kind of only 3, potentially 4 if you want to expand it out, riders who are in contention for the overall. We've talked about 2 of them with Poggi and with Jonas, but the only other one within QE is Jai Hindley. Or as the Italians say, Jai Hindley.
Well, and even he sort of admitted at the end, he was so thrilled, and cool to see his family there as well. But, he said that was not the plan, but he rolled with it. And it was a great ride, incredible ride. But, let's not forget, the guy's won the Giro d'Italia.
He has. And that's a good point, because I think you can get stuck between the why are they underestimating him and also, why is he even potentially a little bit surprised. But a minute 34 he sits in arrears on GC at the moment, and he's won the Giro d'Italia, but the Giro isn't the Tour. I mean, it's such a beautiful race and it's such wonderful, wonderful racing. But it still remains that for the teams, for their sponsors, the Tour de France is it for the season. And a lot of teams and a lot of riders are specifically focusing on the Tour de France. And so it is just a level up. He knows that himself, and he's commented on that himself. But what we've watched is the realisation of a childhood dream. From about 6 years of age, Jai Hindley wanted to go to the Tour de France, and he wanted to emulate his heroes. He was quite young when Cadel Evans won his first Tour de France, the first an Australian, the only an Australian has won. And he sat at home as a teenager, a young teenager, thinking one day I could ride it.
Yeah, and I saw some great comments from Cadell himself saying that he got extremely emotional seeing an Aussie wearing the yellow jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
The 8th Aussie to wear it?
The 8th Aussie to wear it. And we need to just think about the impact that Cadell Evans has had on cycling in Australia, where when he won back in 2011, so 12 years ago, Jai was 15 and dreaming of riding a Tour de France. So it's fair to say that he very significantly watched Cadell and thought, I can dare to do it.
Yeah.
You know, that this is possible. And his parents, Gordon and Robin, over there supporting his Tour de France debut. It's just such a magnificent moment. And so he's sitting in third at the moment, a minute 35 down. I reckon he's definitely looking to secure a podium because next down is Simon Yates and he's 3 minutes 14 down. So nearly 2 minutes between third and fourth. Again, things can change, but I'm happy. I'm feeling happy with that.
Yeah, it's very cool. We need to talk about Glutzy. What happened to Ben, you reckon?
Look, I don't know. To be honest, I feel a bit disappointed for him. I'm going to put a theory on the table. We like our
Hit me.
theories and
Like literally on the table.
things literally on the table. Yeah, I've got a manifesto in here. I'm going to throw it all down. Ben O'Connor, from Unchained, we learnt a bit more of the workings of what's going on at AG2R with him and with the team directors. There was a really confronting moment in Unchained where he could barely get off his bike and he did and said, I think I need an X-ray. And the team were very dismissive. Yeah, get on the bus. There's another team meeting where he's saying, I can barely walk. And they say to him, so today we ride for Ben. And Ben just looks at them like, what's going on here?
I can't wait for the ride tomorrow, sarcastically.
Yeah. And the reason I bring this up is because that kind of experience with that team really damages your relationship with the team, your ability to trust them. Because when you say to them, I'm hurting, you kind of now know that they're not listening. And so I've said to you, Merksy, that I had a similar experience when I was racing and I actually left the team because I felt like I could never really be that comfortable there again and that I didn't know how Ben O'Connor could continue to be at his best in that team. Are we seeing that, do you think? Because that's my short. He was racing really well a couple of weeks ago. Short of something physically happening, which we haven't heard about, that's the only theory.
Yeah. And up until, late in the piece, he was the outsider, from the top two. He was the one that a lot of the press was saying, the one to watch.
Yeah, well,
wrong Aussie.
I mean, we're big supporters of Glutzy in here, but he's currently sitting over 6 minutes down, and I think that we can probably safely say he's not going to gain 6 minutes back.
Both Western Australians.
I know. We've been here at the Wheelhouse. We've been trying Basil Zempillis.
The mayor.
Yes, the mayor of Perth. We have been rallying him for a statue. It was Glutzy. I've been in touch again. I've said, come on now, these fellas. But it is really like an incredible breeding ground of talent over in the West.
There's not a lot of hills there, though.
Well, no, there's not, but they do produce some great climbers. Well, there are. I think there's a few. Oh, look, I haven't done a lot of bike riding in Perth, to be honest, but I don't understand there to be a lot of climbs. There's certainly no Alps or Pyrenees that, they're ducking over at the moment.
No. Well, they've leaving the Pyrenees now. Where are we heading?
We've got a couple of sprint stages coming up. What do you think about Caleb Ewan? Now, I'd like to just talk about his psychological welfare as well. I think that there's two different positions for sprinters. There's riders like Jasper Philipsen. Now, he is riding on a high and on good form, and his team is really supporting him. Mark Cavendish has Mark Renshaw there advising him and helping. and trying to make that happen. Caleb is getting better and sneaking through, but there were some really big time gaps for the sprinters when it came to the mountains that they had to contend with. They're losing over half an hour, down to 38 minutes for some of them, and including 3/4 of the Astana team. So they're all riding together back there with Mark Cavendish, and Caleb's got a little bit of support too. But it's a very, very difficult tour, profile-wise.
Yeah.
Some flat stages coming up, but the damage that having the Tourmalet in the first week,
Eek. Yeah, well, there's only 6 real opportunities for Cav to break that record.
well,
And a couple of them are gone.
but you're pretty steadfast that he's going to.
Oh, I just love a good story. And I think the Tour de France never disappoints, always delivers.
Oh, God.
So
Week
I think,
one so far.
You know, he might leave it till the Champs-Élysées. How good would that
Oh,
be?
that would, yeah. I
You know?
think you'd
Let's
dream-
hope he doesn't
I mean,
leave it that way.
speaking of romantic stories at the Tour de France, how's your fella going, Merksy? The one and only Peter Sagan. Has he nudged a top 10 in a sprint?
And moving on. It's very disappointing.
We have had one, if we can mention, kind of improvement to the coverage this year from the world feed, and that is that we're getting a little bit of race radio through.
Yeah, it's a bit too safe though. It's not live. It's on delay, and it's very, they censor it, and it's a bit too sanitized for my liking. I think they could be a little bit more brave, to be honest.
I have to agree with that. There's a couple of things I've taken from it to be a little bit interesting, and one of those was having EF chatting to Neilson Powless. Now he's currently leading the King of the Mountains jersey, the American.
Which is cool, an American.
Yes, and if you look at they've all got their little avatars on screen. Some of them are actually quite funny because they take their heads and then they put a generic jersey body on them, which is quite funny given that it looks like Jasper Philipsen has the same frame as Jonas Vingegaard, and so their heads look a little bit out of proportion. But Neilson Powless almost looks like he's generated by AI.
Yes, I know what you mean.
He's got the most symmetrical face I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, they say to him on the race radio, these are the big players that you're riding with now. These are the serious guys, the big hitters. You belong here. You are one of them too. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like a really cool motivational speech just to remind him, no imposter syndrome here. You really belong here. And I think that's interesting because if you go to other teams like Alpecin, and we learned this from Unchained, watching them last year, yipes, they're like almost scaring the riders into getting a result.
Yeah, they are. They are commissioning a second season, by the way.
Well, who do you want to see?
Which is, oh gosh, I don't know. I want to see more Yumbo. I want to see the politics.
Yes,
That's
I wonder. You have to wonder. Just referring back to the cranky pants on Wout van Aert this week, how much of that doco got under his skin? Because he didn't like it at the time. He snapped at the media.
He probably ended his Netflix subscription. He wasn't happy. But it makes a great story, and that's what they need to understand.
It does. It certainly does. But I mean, from my view, I'd like to see what's going on at Bora and a little bit of the politics there as well. They seem like a very, proactive, chilled but supportive team to be part of. And I'm finding that race radio, a little like it's not as interesting as it could be, but it does show kind of the different styles that the teams have.
I mean, they've cracked it open. I think it'll only get better, in terms of the way they use it. But they're starting off extremely safe, too safe for my liking.
Too safe. Oh, you want some like
Formula One.
Real hijinks.
Yeah, I want hijinks. I want cursing, emotion.
Well, then, I mean, we've had a few little slaps on the wrist, haven't we, so far, talking about peeling the curtain back. Glutes O'Connor.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oops.
We can't do that in public.
What
it
can't he
seems.
do, Merksy?
Yeah, we'll have a wee.
Yes, he got fined for public urination.
Public urination.
Now, if you've been watching...
200... what's the...
200 Swiss francs.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun
Not
that
a
cycling still fines in Swiss francs?
Mm.
Yeah. It's if you watch the coverage end to end, you see a lot of it. The riders just drop to the back and do that. But if you're watching the highlights, thankfully they edit that out. So, but given how much we see it, where did Glutzy go to actually cop the fine?
Yeah, I don't.
Through a village?
I don't want to know.
Oh dear.
But Matthew Heyman, he got a fine as well for disobeying a official.
Naughty,
While he
a
was in the team
commissaire.
car. Commissaire, yeah.
Oh, the Aussies, they're kind of making waves,
know.
some for the right reasons, some for the not. And speaking of the Aussies making waves, Joe Hindley's family had these fantastic T-shirts on in support of him, as you would imagine and expect, with his face all over it and some writing. But then the next day on the coverage, we saw his dad in a bit of unusual get-up. He was wearing a Kangaroos NRL
rugby
jersey.
league jersey, yes, and he had a Canterbury Bulldogs hat.
Yes.
What is it?
Canterbury.
Canterbury.
Yes, I'm doing well.
Which is strange to me because they're from WA. It's not a big rugby league territory.
No,
We'll dig into that.
Had a solid English accent, so it might be a bit of that heritage. But we're going to ask the hard questions.
Well, SBS ran some beautiful pictures actually of him with his dad on a motorbike. I guess motor pacing him or something. But yeah, it was great photos of father and son training.
They've kudos. A little shout out. I know you tend to ban the shout outs, Merksy, but little shout out to SBS. They've done a fantastic job of bringing the tour to life for us. And while we're talking about that, we have to say hello to Christophe Millet, who believes that the polka dot jersey should be the most heralded. We've never had an Australian take that one away. And I'm disappointed to say that we don't have anybody in the hunt.
No, I do find it strange though. It's a race for climbers. So why isn't the winner of the Tour de France, shouldn't they be the climbers? Shouldn't they win the climbers
overall?
Jersey? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but then what's the point?
Well, that's right.
Right, I see what you're saying. But there's also the sprint days. I see your point there. I think on a tour like this, you kind of have to assume. But it's interesting. If you actually look down the KOM points, you'd probably be very surprised to know that Dylan van Baarle is on there. He's a workhorse here for Jumbo.
Wout's on there, isn't he?
Wout is not on there.
I thought he was on there.
No, but we do have a lot of names that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and the names that you would expect are not there. So Jai's not on there. Glutzy O'Connor, he's not on there. We need to move on to the women's Girodonna, but before that, I just want to give a shout out to who I've decided is my new favourite team, because I've been looking through the jerseys. A lot of jerseys I'm not loving this season, but I'm really loving Uno X.
Oh, you got to describe it.
Pretty much the Norwegians. It is red and it is yellow and it is very block featured, but it stands out quite strongly. And their style of riding, a lot of young talent on there, is so cool that you see the jersey right up the front with all the big hitters. You very often see Jumbo riding en masse together, Ineos riding en masse together, etc. But you'll always see one or two of these quite distinctive Uno X jerseys. I like their style of racing. I think we've got some kind of new talent coming through with those, and watch out. There's more Danes and Norwegians in the tour than ever. I think their local television stations are getting very excited by it, to be honest.
Now, this is the Wheelhouse Podcast. Catherine Lindsay Bates and me, Luke. Me is sometimes referred to as Merksy for some reason. There is another big bike race going on, which I find weird. Why would they hold it during the biggest yearly sporting event on earth, but it's the Giro Donna, Kate.
Yes, the women's Giro d'Italia. That they don't call the women's Giro d'Italia. They used to call it the Giro Rosa. It is now the Giro Donna. We previewed it a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how Annemiek van Vleuten, she was the one to watch. And we can report, Merksy, she's still the one to watch. It's a bit of a strange race this year because they actually have a rest day. So the UCI rule is you can't race for more than 10 days without then having a rest day. So you get a lot of the shorter tours that are 10 days. But because they're putting a massive transfer into the race, they're transferring down to Sardinia, they've actually got a rest day 2 days before the finish. But up until that stage, Annemiek van Vleuten knocking it out of the park. Yet again, 3 stage wins so far and nearly 4 minutes up in the race for GC.
She's amazing. I did want to mention, though, Tade's partner, the day he got a minute put on him, she crashed out with a bad concussion, yeah?
I see what you did there, Urska Zigart.
Zigart.
I wonder if the Belgians are once again calling her Tade's girlfriend or fiancée. Yes, we know that she crashed out because we were following the race, but more than that...
Well, I bring it up because he said he was more concerned about her than having, a minute put on him by Jonas.
I like that.
I like that too. Because it shows that at the end of the day, they're human.
That comment and the comment by him that up the Tourmalet, he thought he may as well pack his bags and go home. That's kind of revealing a lot about him, isn't it? But there have been some revelations at the Women's Giro Donna. And the first one, friend of the wheelhouse, Niamh Fisher-Black.
Oh, yes.
Racing like an absolute rock star. Under 23 world champion from last year. Now, she's down on GC, but she's been taking a few more chances, doing a lot of attacks, climbing like a demon. It's been really great to see her really coming of age. She's second on the Queen of the Mountains classification behind Annemiek van Vleuten. So she's actually wearing that jersey in the day. But it's just a really... coming of age for her because she's been there and thereabouts for a number of years but hasn't quite had the ability to step up. I'm really happy to see SD Works giving her those chances, especially on a team where there's just this incredible talent pool, right? I mean, they've got just so many people that do and can win races. So it's hard sometimes to get the opportunities. But the other rider who's been absolutely incredible is Antonia Niedermeyer, the young German. Now, she showed Annemiek van Vleuten up on stage 4, won the stage, held a chasing Van Vleuten off to take the stage. Unfortunately, she crashed the next day and is out of the race. So that's
bummer.
Like turn of fortune, right? But really, really good to see that we've got some talent really stepping up and not being intimidated by the big names because I think that that's something that we do see often. And also Elisa Longo Borghini, she had a crash. She was a bit worried about how she was feeling. They did give her the okay, Trek Lidl, to continue racing, but she wanted to take a little bit of time out and be able to rest as she needed and recover for the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, which is up next, of course. So a lot of action in the women's Giro, but Van Vleuten, she's going for the Dutch Cup. She's going for her 4th victory in a row, which would put her on equal paring with Anna van der Breggen.
What about the Aussie ladies?
So the Aussies not having...
Mixed bag?
Yeah, mixed bag. We've got quite a number of riders out there. Pretty impressed with Lizzie Stannard, who stepped up from the NRS, and she's riding for Israel Premier Tech. And she's been kind of midfield. It's the sprinters, I think, who perhaps had hoped for a little bit more of a show that haven't quite been able to pull it together. Ruby Rose-Mangannon did get a top 10, so she was 8th on stage 4. So that's promising for her. But I think that it's been a bit of a strange race and a bit of a strange run-in. And I'm hoping that the Aussies perhaps can gain a little bit of form and momentum toward the Tour de France Femme.
I just wish they'd move the date of the race. It doesn't get enough coverage. It doesn't get the coverage it deserves.
No,
surely.
and that's a good point, because next year is even more of a disaster because of the Olympic Games.
Yeah, right.
So they have to move the women's Giro. The Tour de France starts earlier. The women's Tour de France then is after the Olympics. It starts actually the day after the closing ceremony. Next year's calendar is totally wackadoo. So next year's women's Giro will be in the third week of the men's Tour de France. It doesn't get any better.
They need to have a meeting, get around the table.
They
redo
really
the
do.
calendar,
When they're doing the calendar, they really need to look at the men's and the women's together, because I can tell you, you have to search on social media to find any news about the women's racing, and
But
that's
also,
a bummer.
From a coverage point of view, I mean, organisations are stretched as it is. So if you have to send a reporter to the Tour de France, obviously that's going to take the precedent. But you would like the women's race to be covered as well, right? But if you put them on at the same time, that makes it really difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I know organisations like SBS who are trying to get us all of the coverage, on every medium possible for the Tour de France, and they will do for the Tour de France Femme. Then they also have the Giro, and when the organisation has been so, let's say lacklustre, so that I don't swear.
You can swear.
It's really hard for them to even schedule the programming to show it and promote it when they don't even know what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, but also from a sponsorship and sales point of view, if you're a part of that women's race up against the Tour de France, I mean, you're not going to get as many eyeballs as you should.
It's got to be if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And also, I noticed the Wheelhouse is now on Threads by Instagram, because Twitter, the Poor Couch Peloton on Twitter have been bad timing to be throttled, tripping over themselves, missing out on a lot of tweets.
We're trying to get a comment from Elon Musk on that, at the risk of being sued.
Yes.
Bring it.
Sorry, Elon. Yes, but you will now find us over on Threads as well, so give that a go. 30 million sign-ups on the first day. We were one of
30
those.
30 million to our account?
No, not to our account.
Oh, sorry. Right. We can only
We're not
dream.
quite influencers there yet. Before we go, there's been a little bit of movie news this week. Barbie, the Barbie movie.
Oh yeah. Now this is an interesting one. How do we segue to this? Why are we talking about this?
We're talking about this. We're going to put a photo up on our social media because it's a cracker. But my auntie Cheryl, Shezzy, as she's affectionately known, when I was world champion in 2007, she made me a world champion Barbie.
Here it is.
So
look, you got to describe it.
Oh well, she's pretty cool. She's me, pretty much, with white lycra on, rainbow stripes, little gold medal around her neck. World champion Barbie,
completely bizarre,
in a world champion Barbie box, no less.
Yep.
Auntie Shezzy pulled out all the stops.
I've never seen anything like it. But I mean, fitting. Yes. I thought it looked like Margot Robbie.
Yes, well, Margot Robbie's been doing the rounds, hasn't she?
She
promoting the movie, and I can tell you, in the works, Merksy, is Barbie, at least likenesses for the Wheelhouse team.
Yes, I've actually met Margot Robbie at a movie premiere.
Have you now? Did you ask her if she rides a bike?
She does not ride a bike. She's from the Gold Coast, incidentally.
Well,
Gold Coast girl.
Beautiful weather to ride a bike on the Gold Coast.
She did want to come on the Wheelhouse, but she had nothing to really offer. And we don't give away free
Well,
promotion.
to add to the campaign for Basil Zempilas trying to get a statue over in the West, we can add Margot Robbie on a bike.
Yeah,
we can try and do that. Yeah.
All right.
Well, another episode of The Wheelhouse. Thank you for joining us, Couch Peloton. I know that the Tour de France is an exhausting time for everybody, whether you're trying to watch while at work before your boss catches you, or overnight for the Aussies.
Yeah, which is why, and I thank you for buying a new coffee machine for our house.
I did, yes.
To keep us going after watching the stage.
Yes, I did hear in commentary last night that Bridie and Matt Keenan were talking about how they just got a new coffee machine in their commentary box, and Simon Gerrans was like the happiest kid in the world, and I thought that's what Merckx is like.
Well, the problem is, though, right, in a commentary box, what happens if you drink a lot of coffee? It means you've got to...
It means somebody has to talk
while you
go for a run, while you do a glutes O'Connor. Yeah. Just don't get fined.
Yeah, don't get fined. All right, let's go.
Classy finish to the end of the week. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we will see you next week for more Tour de France action.
Don't worry, Joel will be back then. Bye.